but certain analysts have said, hey, JPMorgan's sitting on 1 billion ounces of silver. And while that's not evident in their COMEX depository account, it's possible they could hold it somewhere. It could be sitting in the COMEX vaults under eligible, right? So it doesn't get reported as tradable commodity, or it could be sitting somewhere else. Could someone just sit there and have a year's worth of mine supply sitting under the rug somewhere? Is that possible?
Welcome to Gold Silver Pros, where you'll learn the ins and outs of the gold and silver markets. Searching for the best precious metals deal? Our affiliates are of the utmost trust, quality, and highest customer service in the industry. Shop with our trusted partner, ARK Silver. Access special deals on silver, gold, and platinum through our website or call 307-264-9441.
Hey everybody, this is Rob Kientz of goldsilverpros.com. We're recording this on September 15th, 2022. Should be out on the channel the same day. And I've invited 3 returning guests of the program. You know them all. Jim Forsythe, the Citizens for Sound Money and Silverback Precious Metals. Ian Everard, our business partner over at ARK Silver. And of course, our good friend, Chris Marcus of Arcadia Economics, who was the first daring person to put me out on YouTube and started this whole thing years and years ago. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Great.
Thank you, Rob.
Well, we want to get an update on the silver markets. Why I had you guys together. The purpose of this roundtable is talk silver. It's the hot topic in precious metals right now. I've been stoking those flames admittedly and on purpose and in talking about the silver runoff because it's something I talked about a couple of years ago or about a year and a half ago. And I wanted to point out that it's actually happening, people not to get too discouraged if you're just looking at the price. But there seems also to be some thought about, well, are we really in a shortage condition? So I wanted to start with you, Chris. I think you've been contemplating where we are in the silver market. Are we really in shortage? What does it actually look like? Maybe give us your thoughts on that as you've been thinking about that lately.
Well, we've seen metal coming out of the COMEX, registered inventory now below 50 million ounces. And as Ronan Manley has taken the lead, doing a great job of reporting, we've seen metal coming out of London, declining for over a year now. COMEX really declining ever since the silver squeeze thing back in February of 2001. Wondering where that metal's going. We see India reporting a lot of inflows, and I'm sure Ian can talk about what he's seeing on the dealer side, where it seems like people are continuing to buy silver. Whether it's a run on the COMEX, I personally think it's a little early to say that. We have seen lower levels of inventory on the COMEX. We've seen lower levels in London. One thing I heard someone mention that I've been thinking about that I thought was interesting is that it is a bit of a different environment now than at either of those previous times. Certainly the whole Wall Street silver thing that started a year and a half ago. I think there's a lot more people who are thinking about silver, talking about silver, and are sitting there posting pictures of their stack. And I don't run into too many people that have actually been selling physical silver back. So obviously on the pricing side, ever since the Fed started hiking rates, which, you know, it's interesting to think about back a year ago this time, there were a few people who even thought the Fed was going to raise interest rates, let alone go as aggressively as they have. So as that's been taking place, you know, we've seen the contracts being sold on the COMEX. But yet at the same time, I have yet to run into many people who are actually selling physical. So that's led to some issues with backwardation. We've seen a spike recently in the silver lease rate, and also the SLV shares getting harder to borrow. So a lot of signs indicating that there's stress and a bit of a mismatch. How that plays out, we'll see. I think it's, you know, again, you factor in that the Fed's hiking, continuing to hike after the last CPI report. Now, some percentage chance, still an underdog, but some are even calling for the possibility of 100 basis point hike. So there's some counterbalancing factors, yet we are seeing stress in the market and pressure building there.
Any other comments from you guys, Jim or Ian? I know you're more closely involved in actual distribution of silver and sourcing silver. What are your views from like a physical perspective? Chris brought up some good points. We've been here before in silver. We've been here where we haven't had a lot. And that's something that happened pre-COVID. We were very thin on silver on the COMEX. And all of a sudden you see this massive inflood of silver, and where the hell did it come from? It was just, and silver and gold at the same time, it's like dumped it onto COMEX. And I guess the concern from a lot of people out there is there another stockpile somewhere? Certainly we've done research on the various markets, but there are a lot of private holders. What are you guys seeing from the retail side? You're seeing a lot of buying, but are you seeing people come out and say, Ian, I've got, 2 million ounces of silver. I'd be willing to give it up at $50 an ounce. Are there any anecdotal examples of those types of stockpiles?
I've had a few people comment that their exit strategy is $50, $60. And I tell them, don't be so silly. The party will only just be getting started at those sort of rates. And and I think the volatility is going to increase even higher. We could see when it breaks through 30, we could see it surge to 40, then come back to 32 and just bounce around. I mean, that's a typical sign, as a crisis of supply. We get these crazy, wild fluctuations. But at the end of the day, we're a lot closer to having lower stockpiles. And is there a secret stash hidden? I doubt it. I haven't seen any evidence. It's possible, but I think a lot of the buyers now, the big buyers, that my clients, they're first-time buyers, and they're not buying to speculate. They're buying for their grandchildren. So they're talking 10, 15, 20 years. They're just putting it away because they looked at history, and over history, the precious metals always give our accounting for currency debasement, and we've had the greatest worldwide currency debasement ever, as far as I know.
And Ian, that's a very traditional view on precious metals, one that I hold, by the way. I agree with you. But there's another view, 𝙂𝙊𝙊𝙍, somebody's talked about this a lot. Other people have as well, certainly not the only one. But certain analysts have said, hey, JPMorgan's sitting on 1 billion ounces of silver. And while that's not evident in their COMEX depository account, it's possible they could hold it somewhere. It could be sitting in the COMEX vaults under eligible, right? So it doesn't get reported as tradable commodity, or it could be sitting somewhere else. Could someone just sit there and have a year's worth of mine supply sitting under the rug somewhere? Is that possible?
Well, if they did, and that information came out, what would happen to the silver miners? They'd just pack up and go home, wouldn't they? They'd just shutter. They would shutter the mines they could. Exploration would cease. So the supply would virtually stop from the silver, the 20 to 25% that comes from primary silver mines. Combine that with a worldwide depression, which I think we're in, and then we're going to get a drop off potentially in copper, zinc, and lead mining, where 70 to 80% of the silver comes from. So it could actually increase the shortage by someone announcing there's a huge stockpile, because it would curtail any future exploration and development of projects. I mean, if we're close to all-in sustaining costs at around the $19, I mean, for some mines, they're not even viable at that, with the increased labor rates, increased governmental costs, permitting, and increased fuel costs. Breakdown of globalization, costs are going to get higher and higher for equipment and technical expertise.
What are your thoughts on that, Jim, from your perspective? I know that you do a lot with Silverback in terms of distributing metal and making it available to people. And in terms of supplies, have you noticed any shortages, or are you hearing anything from the community about what's going on with silver?
Well, first off, I wanted to respond to Ian's customer saying he was setting a $1 price target or whatever. I agree that that's, even if you are going to set a target, it shouldn't be in dollars, right? Because if he sets a $50 price target, well, what's gas at the time that it's $50? Is gas $15 a gallon? If so, it's not the time to sell silver, because silver would be undervalued relative to gas. So, yeah, in terms of us, we're a much smaller sample size than Ian, but we did see kind of a slow summer, and then that's really picked up the last couple of weeks. We've got one deal of someone wanting to trade the 1,000-ounce bars for the smaller products. And so that's we're going to get 18 bars that way. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is if there's some big player with a stockpile, okay, well, if they're using that to keep prices down, right? It would only make sense for them if they think they can then buy it back, right? They're not just going to give away their silver. So that's always my fear is something like that happens, keeps price down long enough for people to lose interest. We know the value's there. If there is a stockpile, it's still finite. The dollar is still in trouble. And so we still should be holding precious metals. So, a big player could do something like that temporarily. And, maybe that's why this correction has lasted so long. But the hope, I think, would be that we all go away and give up, which I don't plan on doing. And I've been encouraged by, other people, using this as a way to accumulate, because that's what the big players have done, is use price weakness to accumulate. But now average citizens, average people are doing that, which is really great. And thanks to people like Ian and you guys for educating people on it, because now is the time to keep accumulating.
Yeah. I have my thoughts on this, and I've talked about this in public, although I have more that I want to say. I'm not going to put it out on the public part of the channel. I'll put it on my new unfiltered broadcast that we'll be doing once every couple of weeks, because it's speculation, and I don't want to put it out over just the free YouTube channel. I want to introduce that concept in more of a closed door, because I'm going to take the data that I have and I'm going to throw out some high-end speculation on what's going on. I suspect that a couple of things are in play just at a simple level. Yes, we're having some runoff in silver. No, they don't want the market to know it, because silver is critical in everything. It's what I talked about in my recent speeches at conferences. Is silver is probably the most critical thing in the world outside of like food, water, and air, because everything needs it. And so I think that there is management of that market. We saw Ross and Benham mention that at the 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙍 conference. They actively were managing the market, and I think there's reasons why they're doing it. I also suspect there's a bigger game in play than just for silver as money. And I think that that's elevated the game above where most of your silver commentators are going to talk about it. Most are going to talk about it as a precious metal, as constitutional money, as something that individuals can have to store wealth. But I think silver, when looked at in the international perspective in the big player markets, looked at something completely different. And I think that's what people are missing. I think people are missing how silver has become a critical mineral for development of society across the world. And I've got some additional thoughts I'll put on that when I get to that members video. Wanted to turn attention really quickly, some big sales that come through. Ian, I'm going to turn it to you. We had, I think, a $3 million sale come through ARK. Can you give us any detail about that? Because people are really interested. They're interested in the big one that came through Miles Franklin. They're interested in the big ones that are coming through you. What did that order look like? Can you give us anything on it?
Yeah, very basically, some very smart people who worked incredibly hard to build dollar wealth are turning it into silver. Multiple reasons, one of them being privacy. It's about the precious metals are about the last thing that are going to maintain or increase your purchasing power and have as much privacy as we're going to find in, I think, anything now that we can put our dollars into. So that was a major reason. They intend to redeploy, possibly. They've come out of real estate, and if they time it right, they'll probably get 10 times the real estate back. So some people are doing that play, but many people have built wealth up or have inherited wealth. They see that their children don't necessarily understand the signs of times, and they think they're going to retire on Bitcoin and stuff like that. Sorry, any crypto fans, not many people are going to become rich on crypto, just a few. And so they're storing it up to pass on to the grandchildren. And then you look at what the central banks are doing with digital currencies. The Fed now, I think a lot of people are saying it could be fully active mid to late next year. When we go fully digital, and we're nearly fully digital anyway, but when we go fully digital, privacy is gone. So even if you purchase precious metals then with your digital currency, it's coded. They know you got it. At the moment, the reporting is very limited, if no reporting required on purchasing precious metals. So is it a loophole that's been deliberately left so the elites can do it and follow the rules and not keep privacy? Possibly. So yeah, the large sales, many reasons, but the main reason is the dollar is dying. And as 𝙎𝙊𝙇𝙑𝙬 has said, you know, help you prosper whilst the dollar dies. It's dying. Chris saw that a long time ago, and that's accelerating. So it's dying at what, 20-25% a year now, and we may get a major devaluation. I have a sense there could be an international equivalent to the Plaza Accord when the dollar was devalued. I think we could have a whole fiat currency devaluation.
So you think the currency may be on its way out, Chris? What are your opinions on that? Do you still think your original thesis around the dollar and gold and silver is still going to come true? I know we've talked about the inventory situation, but do you still see silver as a place in the world for people trying to get out of this next system, which certainly doesn't look like it fits within the original concept of the Constitution in terms of, you know, free, accurate money that you know, really ultimately is governed by the people? Is that value proposition with silver still there for people?
I think so, because none of the original problems that at least led me into silver, and I think led a lot of other people into silver, have changed. The U.S. is still increasing the debt load. There's someone on the other half of that that's not going to get repaid. Although I don't know that reversal in silver is going to happen today. The dollar index, I think, is close to 110 right now and has been rising as the Fed's been raising interest rates. Will be interesting. We've seen how silver has reacted while the dollar index has been rising. Be interesting to see what happens when that's finally reversed. Again, I don't think that we're going to have the pivot coming next month, or will it be next year? There's a lot of stress out there in the economy. The real estate market is starting to experience trouble similar to 2008. And Dan Oliver's new newsletter came out, or not newsletter, but their fund report I was reading right before we came on, and showing that we're headed towards some sort of breakage. So you know, we hear the debate about, is the Fed going to pivot now? Are they going to pivot next year? And that's up in the air, but it doesn't seem like there are many who think the Fed's never going to pivot, and that at some point they're going to start printing money again. And I wonder if that's when, you know, we see a lot of money come into gold and silver. And Ian, you mentioned the cryptos. I thought it was interesting that last day that we were at the Silver Symposium, there was that young guy who I guess had done pretty well on Bitcoin. Seemed like he was in his 20s, and he was talking about how he retired, and there he was at the Silver Symposium. So I don't know how many people in the crypto crowd fit that profile, but to the degree of, if you're sitting there with capital and looking for an asset that's cheap and has the profile to go up in the coming years, certainly I think silver fits that. Perhaps one thing that I've thought about quite a bit lately is that, at least at the current moment, the supply is meeting the demand. Maybe there's a deficit, and perhaps I've heard some suggest, and I think is very well possible, that some of the metal coming out of these inventories could be meeting that supply gap deficit. But we're not in a silver shortage now. Now, the conditions, when we look at the government mandates for going green and making everything electronic, and the solar panel projections coming out, add on that, you know, it's not at this price encouraging silver companies to go out and launch new projects. The conditions are there to see a shortage in the coming years. Matt Watson does a good presentation where he looks just at the supply and demand numbers and says that we're for the next 10 to 20 years, we're headed for a big gap. Now, if you do have that Federal Reserve crisis and finally reversal in the dollar, then that makes for the perfect storm. I think that's why, or that's why a lot of people are holding silver. That's why I'm holding silver. I don't think we're to that point yet, but I guess it comes down to how people balance all these factors together and where they see things going. But that's the context of the whole profile going forward. We're not there yet. And if none of those change, it doesn't seem like there's an easy solution out of that going forward. That's when perhaps we'll see the move in silver take place.
So you think it could be that whatever's going on with the physical market right now, maybe in preparation as people move around and, you know, take their bets or figure out what they want to do. But the ultimate realization of the silver scenario comes, it still has to be the monetary event, the Fed event, essentially. There where people are going to say, okay, whatever that system is, it's under stress. We need to go somewhere else. Is that your view on that, Chris?
I think so. I mean, I think the people who are into silver, a lot of them are buying silver now and maybe frustrated by the price, but people who really believe in the silver thesis are buying silver while it's cheap. Are mainstream people buying silver right now? Probably not. So when you see more stress in the markets, and again, I think it makes sense that people are wondering about a Fed reversal, and I think there's a good reason to believe that eventually will be coming, and maybe that's what it takes for the mainstream to go in. Ian talks a lot about how much silver there's left out there and how many ounces each person would have to buy. We haven't hit that point yet, but certainly if you have that happen, and then also factoring on the way that a lot of things trade now based on momentum, where when silver is getting clobbered, I think that's killed a lot of the interest. Silver hit 50 back 11 years ago, and then over the past couple of years, sitting below $20, no one cared. We saw during silver squeeze, it changed for a couple of hours, maybe not that long, but I wonder what happens if silver goes over $30 and then people are talking about it. And then once you have people pile in, there's not that much of it left. That's what would seem to me the scenario where you have some sort of shortage. We haven't gotten there yet, but those are the conditions that I think would need to take place.
Jim, next question to you. And you're a part of Citizens for Sound Money, so obviously you're in an advocacy group for some sort of honest money for the people. Obviously, the fiat system, you know, in a lot of our opinions, wasn't it. What is your view on that? Is there a strong undercurrent among people that you associate with that still believe in the value of silver as money? And do you think people are going to come back to silver, much as Chris is saying, when we get into what these long anticipated problems that we all expect are going to happen with the Fed and the dollar, especially given the geopolitical stuff that's arisen? Seems as though we have a little bit more appetite for de-dollarization going on that may accelerate some of the effects, you know, of the end of the dollar potentially. Are people still talking about, are there enough people out there that still understand the value of silver as money?
Well, it's definitely growing, but yeah, we definitely have, you know, a core who believe that and who continue to believe it. And you talk about the Fed pivoting, you know, is it soon or is it later? But you're saying everybody thinks they will eventually. And that's what we see is people that are interested in gold and silver as money. They don't know when it's going to happen, but they know that it's coming. And you know, because, you know, throughout history, there's been something like 6,000 fiat currencies. They've all collapsed. They've all failed. Usually 30 to 50 years. We're on the long side of that. You know, everything's in place. You know, it's a matter of time. And so, you know, for those buying, stacking gold and silver, you have to be patient and view it as, you know, this isn't a trade that I'm making to be rich next year. This is something I'm doing to protect myself for what I know is coming, or what, you know, is almost a certainty is going to be coming. You know, and yeah, this has lasted, you know, over 50 years. Will it last 52, 53, 55? I don't know. But the signs are all there, you know, with the sanctioning of Russia and the move away to de-dollarize, because people see it now of, I'm not going to hold dollars. It's, you know, foreign countries saying I'm not going to hold dollars because it's at risk of being sanctioned. You know, lots of countries have been sanctioned at one point or another. You know, then the Fed trying to introduce digital currency is not going to help. I think that's going to hurt things because, it's a massive invasion of privacy, more than they've already done. So yeah, I think it's in the cards. The key is, countries, may adopt sound money at some point. Governments, I should say. Governments may adopt sound money at some point, but they're not going to do it. It's not in their interest to do so. It's in their interest to be able to turn on the money printer. So they may do it at some point, but I don't think they would do it until things are really, really bad for the people, until there's a really massive outcry, until, until the pitchforks comes out. So our big thing is to encourage people to start adopting a sound money, adopting sound money on their own using, market-based solutions versus government-based solutions. Don't wait for the government to save you on this one. They're not going to.
That's an interesting, go ahead, Chris.
Just one thought, if I could mention, appreciate Jim mentioning the sanctions, because you've created an interesting environment while the dollar is rallying. You also, while we may not see it on Wall Street, you see countries becoming very concerned about that, where if you're not in line with what policies the US government suggests, basically you get kicked out. And I think that's a pretty scary precedent. And countries are responding to that. We see country day after day joining or making arrangements to join or de-dollarization. And I don't think it's an accident. How that resolves, we'll see. But just the impetus for countries to be protecting their assets against that, I think we're seeing that play out now.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess the last thing I want to talk about, a little bit the elephant in the room when it comes to precious metals and cryptos, and realizing that we're not all crypto experts, but we understand. I think we all understand them fairly well. It seems as though the crypto complex, not only Bitcoin and Ethereum and Monero and those types, but just this blowout of 10 plus now 1,000 different types of coins has grabbed the attention, in particular, of younger generations who are more maybe mobile friendly and tech friendly, but also has grabbed the attention of people looking for alternatives to the dollar. I think we've seen some chinks in the armor of the cryptos. I've been critical of them in the past, although full disclosure, I am mining Bitcoin. I will say this though, from a Bitcoin mining perspective, that process has been more fraught with issues than anything I've done in precious metals. So the system itself is complicated. And I think the cryptos are very fragile, maybe more fragile than people understand. But my question for the group is, obviously a lot of attention is going to crypto. Has that muddied things from your perspective, from the value of precious metals? Are they complementary in any way? Do you think having cryptos as an alternative competing currency could be good for the metals? And think about Ron Paul and talking to Bernanke and holding up a silver coin saying we need alternatives. Should we just open up this free market completely? Or do we think the cryptos are drawing attention from the metals and that could be affecting, that market in a way that people, are making an either or decision between the cryptos and the metals? I'll leave that open for anybody if you want to cover it.
I have some thoughts on that one.
Okay.
I've gone back and forth over the past couple of years where I think the people are into silver and gold. A lot of them buy silver and gold, and that isn't phased yet. I look at the market cap of some of the cryptos. I think the top 5 cryptos on Coin Market Cap, their individual market caps are each over the market cap or the value of the above ground inventory of silver, which is interesting. And also, when I think about where I first heard of Bitcoin, this was probably back in 2011, and it was actually from a guy that I used to buy silver from, who worked for Peter Schiff's gold and silver operation. So he started under Schiff, was selling gold and silver, and then over the years, I don't know if he kept any of his gold and silver, but was certainly heavily into Bitcoin and, moved his career over to that, was focusing on that. So I think there is a degree that it has taken some attention away. I wonder how much of the crypto technology is actually being used productively right now. So I suppose if we see more implementation of cryptos, then that could have an effect yet. I just wonder, it's interesting when you look at the pricing of crypto. I mean, how do you actually price something like that? Is it worth 20,000? Is it worth 60,000? How much is it actually being used? So we've certainly seen a lot of money go in there, and I don't know what the true measure of how much that's taken away from gold or silver. But as you were saying that, and I was thinking about how the guy that I first heard of it was selling gold and silver for a 𝙎𝙄. And then he went completely into crypto. Hindsight, I think there's some degree to which that has been the case.
So I think the advance of crypto has been a fantastic thing. But from the beginning, I found out about Bitcoin back in 2010 when I was running for office, and my campaign manager told me about it. But from the very beginning, I saw it as a really great idea, but that, they should pair it with gold and silver. And that, because if you think about it, people talking crypto versus gold and silver, which is it? Well, assuming the government doesn't adopt gold and silver as money, how are you going to go spend your gold and silver? You can trade it at a coin shop, you can barter. But in this day and age, you got to have a digital component. And how are you going to have a digital component if the government's not involved? And then along comes blockchain and solves that problem. So I think people are making a mistake to say, is it one or the other? I think it's the combination. I think asset-backed digital currencies, I think, are going to really continue to grow. And the crypto space has been a really great technology proving ground to develop those technologies that then can get paired with the asset. In the end, I think it's going to be up to people to decide what they want to use as money. Some may use Bitcoin, some may want to do gold and silver, but that market of ideas that crypto has brought out has, I think, been absolutely fantastic. And thankfully you have people like Lawrence Lepard and Will.
So just real quick to interrupt you, you think that has increased education for people on alternative money outside the dollar and maybe open the mind of people to look at other things?
Yeah, and I was going to say that as well. I mean, first off, it educated a lot of people that may not listen to some boomer talking about gold and silver.
Yeah.
But, now it's crypto. It's because and rightly so. If you're 20 years old and somebody says this is money, this is going to be our new money, they're going to go, how do I send that to my friend? How do I buy stuff on eBay?
We're used to using Cash App and Venmo and.
Right, exactly. And so crypto kind of solved that problem, in a non-government way. And so it's brought a lot of attention to fiat and they said digital gold, but now with what I think I've seen a lot of is with the big massive pullback that we've had in crypto and the kinesis 𝙎𝙊𝙇𝙬 gold and silver in relation was much, much stronger. It held its value really well. You start to see people going, okay, I thought this was a sure thing. Now I understand that there's a lot of risk involved in crypto. Maybe it will, maybe Bitcoin will become, the monetary standard of the future, in which case it's $1 million per Bitcoin, but maybe it's not, maybe it goes to zero. It makes sense to diversify your sound money portfolio into things like gold and silver and with exchange pairs, kinesis 𝙎𝙊𝙇𝙬 is a great way to do that because you can directly swap between Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever into gold and silver and back and forth.
So kinesis has created a way to facilitate gold and silver trade using a crypto-like, and that's different token technology, but using a crypto-like interface. They use Stellar, I think, as their underlying blockchain. So it is blockchain based.
Yeah.
And they've created an exchange. And what they've done is they've created that exchange on top of the physical exchange, what they built first. They built a physical gold and silver market. Once that flow was there that they needed, then they just connected, the token to it. And I have lots of comments on that I'll save for the end. Ian, did you have any comment on the crypto piece?
My suspicion is it's being allowed as a distraction. That's my suspicion. And because it's extremely volatile, that scared a lot of people out of thinking there is an alternative to the dollar, because even with the debasement, the dollar appears day to day to be stable. It doesn't go up 20%, down 20% day in, day out, doesn't oscillate. So my suspicion is we've been allowed to have cryptos, and possibly the volatility has even been increased by some government agencies, some big players with limitless pockets who can cause it to be volatile. I was talking to a friend yesterday, very smart guy, and he says, well, explain to me why silver is a good idea, because it's so, he's scared because it's so volatile. And it goes way back to when Americans were allowed to own gold in a significant amount. They brought in the paper gold to make the paper price extremely volatile, to scare people out of holding it. So my suspicion is it's been allowed as a distraction. Another big concern is there's no moat around any particular crypto. The cost of entry, I think, is about half an hour of a good developer, and you can have a Rob coin, could have a Chris coin, you can have a Jim coin, an Ian coin.
You should do a Rob coin.
My dog could have a coin. I'm thinking about doing a Jimmy dog coin. That'd be pretty cool, but
Right.
there's no cost of entry. Whereas this stuff, sweat, blood, tears, and geology limits it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So crypto is in, you can have an infinite number, infinite number of finite is infinite. So it can be diluted forever. In the same way as fiat currencies. Well, they can't be diluted forever because it collapses. People lose all trust in it. So that's my concern, is it's been allowed, and the volatility has been actually exacerbated beyond what peer-to-peer, what a normal guy on the street would be doing. And again, frighten people back into the good, cozy government system. But yeah, it's personal choice, but at least you're thinking if you're getting out of the dollar into something else. And those, you know, like Chris said, that crypto guy is looking at having his own silver coin. And his reason was, why have something, why get a cap or a pen or a mug that, you know, has zero value? Why not get something that has permanent value? So if a guy like that, and he's a huge influencer, is waking up to the value of something that is real and permanent, and that's what we need. And again, privacy, I don't understand whether crypto is private or not, but from what I do understand is every transaction is recorded. That's how it's proof of work, and that's how the transaction's approved. So with supercomputers, well, the good guys and the bad guys are going to get supercomputers. You can work out who's moved what, where, when, throughout all history of crypto.
That's what I love about asset-backed digital currencies. It retains that cash component to it. You can redeem for physical, spend it in barter or trade, and you still have that privacy. Option for privacy.
I do think you all make good points, and I agree with all of you in terms of the cryptos. I think the original idea was something more along the lines of, let's create a competing currency that solves our problems. I think it was meant well. I do think certain parties have gotten involved in the cryptos, and maybe they're being influenced in certain directions that may or may not align with that original vision. And so I have concerns that when you have a system like that that can be manipulated, we're going down the same road we went down with bullion, which was manipulation on the exchanges, manipulation of flows, lack of transparency. I think we see that in the crypto complex. I think that they both have that in common, that they're being messed around with by people that have certain objectives. And it'll be interesting to see over the next few years which one or both, hopefully, are freed up to meet their original purpose. I guess the bigger risk is, and we can probably all agree on this, if nothing is allowed to be a freely trading honest money, if we don't get gold and silver, if they continue to control that with tyrannical, edicts or whatever, and they mess around with the cryptos and we can't get a truly sound money there, what do we do now? We have to, I think, to interact in society, have some sort of free money. That's the big question. What do we do? So I think the people that may be attacking crypto and gold and silver are the same, and that may be where gold, silver, and crypto people can come together and say, hey, we're all fighting the same enemy ultimately. Maybe we should all get together and try to figure this out together. Maybe that's the takeaway. It shouldn't be gold versus crypto or silver versus crypto. It should be, let's all get together and figure out a way we can deal with the common issue. And the common issue is we all want free money. There are parties that may not want that for whatever reason. How do we address that issue? And maybe that's the big takeaway there. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
On the real big picture, Rob, I think, unfortunately, we're in a situation now, the majority of Americans, even if they perceive something is badly wrong, haven't got the capacity the financial capacity or the mental capacity to step out of the system. So I think we're going to get a very divided United States, in that maybe 80–90% of the citizens are going to be compliant with whatever the government says. And then they're going to allow 5 or 10% of us who formed an alternative, gone on our own standard, gold standard, silver standard, or even crypto standard, people who have stepped out of the system, we may be allowed to carry on with some degree of independence. But unfortunately, the majority of Americans are going to be slave to whatever the political system tells them to do, with 60–70% living paycheck to paycheck. Was it 45 million on the SNAP food program? 50% of Americans not paying any tax. The dependency on government, we have a command economy already in America, and I think I've spoken about it before. And unfortunately, that's communism, isn't it? Or fascism, either are just as bad as ugly. When the government is deciding, allocating everything, it doesn't end well for the citizens. So it sounds a bit gloomy, but there's still a window of opportunity for people to get out of the system, and it might mean cutting back your lifestyle, cutting some subscriptions, and not buying that new car, or selling some spare stuff. But I do sense the window of opportunity is narrowing on to escape from what's coming down with the central bank currencies, digital currencies. And I think that's one reason why a lot of people are moving a large amount of wealth out of the system.
Well, that's why Citizens for Sound Money sees business owners as such a key.
Yeah.
And we have businesses adopting, asset-backed digital currencies. The company I work for has, because not that way in this transition, if the business is adopting gold and silver as money, then they can start paying their workers in gold and silver. So yeah, they may be living to paycheck, but if the business does the right thing, it can help get them through this as well.
Yeah.
Chris, any last thoughts on that one, or any wrapping comments for you?
No, I think that makes sense what they're both saying, and it's just a good thing, I think, that people are thinking about alternatives, whether they opt into cryptos or gold and silver. But I guess that was why I started my channel a couple of years ago, where after studying the housing bubble and the response to the housing bubble, seeing that this wasn't over, and perhaps has dragged out longer than I might have expected, and probably will continue to go longer than we would expect. On one hand, I suppose I get it. The Fed, what are they supposed to do? Say, oh, we'll let it crash and give up our power? So yeah, I get it. And it's not an easy situation for anyone, but certainly a good time to be thinking about it. And appreciate you, Rob, the things that you're doing, and just introducing information and letting people know what's going on out there. And I think people have to make their own decisions, what they feel is right or how they see things playing out, but at least being aware of things, that things are changing.
Yeah, good points. Thank you very much. I agree with you. And thank you, Chris, for everything that you've done, and all you guys for all that you've done. The group of guys that we have here, and the reason I had them on the program is because they've all done something in their own personal life that not only edifies their personal beliefs, but they're doing things to help other people. Chris with the education piece, of course, and the awareness, and for as long as he's been doing it, and Ian and Jim with not only education, but also providing a market for people that want to get interested. And I think it's pretty clear right now, the reason I held this particular roundtable this week, it's pretty clear right now that there seems to be a lot of personal inventory over positions as we get closer. What we all see is going to be some sort of big systemic change, and maybe tough times coming our way. How do we deal with that? And I feel like people are getting more introspective and questioning everything as we get closer. And I think that's normal for us to question it. And we certainly want to provide the forum with different ideas here for you. And that's why I put people on the program that don't necessarily agree with me, 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙀𝙍 and Leo Organtzas of the world, because I want to bring that holistic view, because it's okay to have doubts. It's okay to wonder what's going on. But I think it does help to keep ourselves educated and remember why we're here, and don't necessarily lose faith, because every philosophy I've ever looked at, religion, self-help book, whatever, it's always, it gets darkest before the light. You'll question more as you get to the conclusion. But I think if we believe in what we believe and we stay strong, we'll be okay either way. I think Jim made a good point. Diversify a little bit. Ian made a good point. Make sure you're staying tuned to what's going on. You know, Chris is one of the channels out there to educate you on that as well. And I think that's important. So thank you guys for the roundtable. I appreciate it. We'll do more as we go along with the channel. Until next time, this is Rob Kientz with Gold Silver Pros.